Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music. But as I also like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And the conversation today is going to be kind of an instance of that happening. I'll tell you exactly how we met one another, but I have the distinct privilege to be able to talk today with a fabulous chef, Chef Daniel Ben David. And so thanks so much for taking the time, Chef.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
Sure. So I can remember this just like it was a couple weeks ago, which it was. But we were having a meeting, and the dinner was out on the beach at the Hotel del Coronado, and there was paprika in a container, and I wasn't sure what it was for, and somebody said it was for the corn, and I blopped some on there. And then I asked you about it because I wasn't sure if I'd done it right. You were standing there helping everybody. And you looked at it and kind of thought, oh, that's really bad the way you did that. So you sort of jettisoned that corn and redid it and put the paprika on it and turned it around in the sauce, and it was like amazing. So then we just started talking, and I've wanted to talk with, some culinary professionals, cooks, etc., about, ties in with music and cooking, preparing food, whatever that means. And you said, oh my God, music is such a passion of mine. And I said, how'd you like to have a conversation for Planetary Gig Talk? And you said, fine. So I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me on. I think being able to relate art with art is probably one of the most simplistic things in the world, but can also be some of the most complicated conversations too. But yeah, blob is the correct word. When I saw the corn, it was definitely blobbed on. And I think that that shows a little bit of lack of passion for food. When you put a little bit more love into the food, sometimes you can take something from okay to amazing.
Yeah, I know, and it was amazing, and I tend to. It's not. I'm not. My forte is not food preparation or presentation, but that's okay.
That's okay. I'll take care of that one for you.
Yeah. So I generally ask folks on the podcast, where did music come from in your life? But I think we could use a little more background. You've been kind of all over the world, and now you're chef at the Hotel del Coronado. But what's a little bit of your background, and then eventually tie that into how your passion for music and when you remember that starting and all that.
So as you said, I've spent my life moving all over the world. My early days of food and music would have to come back to when I was about 6 years old. Growing up in South Africa, my dad and my brother were both born in South Africa. My mom and I are both American citizens, obviously, traveling and raising all over the world. My mom was in the hotel business and my dad was a chef. So from early starts of my days, music was something that was played in my household from the time we woke up in the morning to the time we went to bed at night. And the types of music that went with that could range anything from old school South African bands all the way to classic rock. It really had a lot to do with just what was going on that day and what everyone's emotions were that day. And once I started getting involved with food, it was more of like Sunday barbecues at our house. Because in South Africa, we have braais, and a braai is our version of a barbecue. But the difference is you invite all your friends and family. It's not just the immediate family. So anybody you work with, anybody that is next door to you, they will come over, and everybody brings something to it. And with that becomes a lot of loud South Africans, a lot of drinking, and a lot of eating. And that was our everyday Sunday. That's how we got together as a family. We didn't do dinner every single night traditionally. My dad was a chef. He was never home to do that, So as I look back on my childhood, I remember those things. I remember being outside. We lived right by the beach. I remember my parents bringing all the crayfish in, all the different types of snook and the different types of fish. I remember being outside of the barbecue making boerewors and things like that, to where in the background, naturally, there was music again. And when you tie those two things together, it really becomes more of like a unity versus an event. It becomes more natural that way.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. It reminds me of one of my friends, a guy I interviewed, Frank Fatuski, a musician, said food and music, man. That's what it's about, food and music. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that sounds like some great fun times. Really, really, and as you said, it kind of brings it together when you add the music to it.
I don't remember, even when we would go on, we'd go up to the mountains all the time, and the music in the car that would get us up there. And as soon as we got up there, the first thing my parents and my dad's buddies would do was set up well, back then we had the cassette players, the old school boom boxes with the
Right.
double players on them. So they would always set up both tapes. So that way, when one tape was over, they hit the next tape and then they'd flip this one and flip that one, so that's when I started thinking back as family barbecues. That was one of the things that was always a staple into it was the music.
So, how did you? I mean, your father was a chef, so obviously that kind of gave you a bit of a head start. But talk about a little bit your passion for music. I mean, why do you cook? Why do you prepare food? What is that
Well,
about? Or creating that art? Yeah.
before we even get to the food part, I think a
All
lot of
right.
it had to do with the fact that I was a challenge as a child. There was always something going on that caught my attention, and it tended to get me in trouble at school. Every time I got in trouble at school, my parents wouldn't traditionally punish me. I would have to go to the restaurant with my dad or go work with my dad. So at a young age, I would be in the kitchen peeling carrots, slicing, dicing onions, whether I liked it or not. And back then, I didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
And had you told me when I was 6, 7, and 8 years old that when I'm 31 years old, I'll be at one of the best hotels in America, I probably wouldn't have believed you either. But then as I look back, some of my highlights of being in trouble sometimes were those times with my dad where I'd come into work and there'd be 100 pounds of carrots or 100 pounds of onions or something.
Wow.
And I would look at it like it was a never ending pile. I do that every day of my life now.
Yeah.
So those early stages, I think, really instilled something into me. But then it just became more of like, and something I don't allow in my kitchens now is music. And there's reasons for that, just based on the level of the culinary that we do and the style of events that we do and the size of the team. My team is up to 30 people strong, depending on one given day.
Wow.
Running around in a huge kitchen with knives, heat, and hot oils and stuff like that, to where it's not a safe environment. But on the other end of it, when I was going through my apprentice days and my younger days in the kitchen, music was always in kitchens because there was smaller teams. They were more controllable. We're not doing events for 500 people, 1,000 people. And it kind of just, the ambience of it. We'd come in, some of my kitchens we'd go into, there'd be certain types of classical music going on during prep time only. And then as we were prepping the food, the knife would kind of rock a certain way. And then as the music's going in the background, you tend to realize that now you're going with the beat of the music.
Wow.
And when you slice and you do certain things with a knife control is some of the most important skills you have as a chef.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start to get into a rhythm of something and your body just naturally goes with it, and then you kind of put two and two together, like, oh, the beat's dropping here, I'm doing this here, and then you kind of relate the two together, then it becomes fun. But then on the other side of it, like with the kitchen that I run today, people sing. People are tapping. So as a knife is chopping around the cutting board and you start to hear the different types of tones, and then someone starts to sing a song or someone starts to sing a verse, then it kind of becomes another vibe. Now it's like, what's the word when you sing without music?
A cappella, without instrumentation.
We start to go a cappella with knives and cutting boards and chopping sounds, and then someone who can sing in the kitchen. So somehow, some way, music is always dragged in, regardless if we allow a big boom box in the kitchen or if it's just the natural sound of what's going on and then someone picking up on it.
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand that. This is fascinating. So if you've got a small kitchen or you're at home cooking or whatever, music in the background is sort of
always
fine. It's you wouldn't do it without music.
No, absolutely not. The only reason I do it without music, without dropping any big names, one is the company I work for. It's a company standard. I will respect it all day.
Right.
Two, the size of my kitchen. You've been to my property. The size of my kitchen, we call it the jungle, because at any given time, there's something going on. And if you don't have full control over that, sometimes music can be distracting too, because you may start to really like something. You might start to sing along with something or kind of get in the mode of something and you lose your focus. So finding that balance is key. But then when I'm off the floor and I'm in my office, the first thing I do is I play my music. When I'm at a beach event and we're setting up prep, there's music. So I think because music can have such an influence on cooking, the right time is also key.
So it's so with the bigger band, if you will. It's almost like an orchestra. You've got a food
Yes,
orchestra going on, and then things get so critical that if you had something going on in the background, people could lose focus a little bit,
lose
not
focus.
hear something they were supposed to hear.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
And a lot of that is just more about safety. You know, if I have a guy who's working, for example, if I have a guy who's searing off 1,000 pieces of steak for me, okay,
wow,
and then I have a guy behind him who's slicing the green onions for these 1,000 steaks. And the one guy turns around and he's holding his knife, and the other guy turns around with a steak, and then they're not paying attention to each other, saying, "Hey, behind you, or hot or sharp," and they're actually listening to a song. I've lost control, and there could be an accident. And that's what I have to avoid every single day too, because it's a lot more than just making good food and putting it on a plate for a customer. It's how do I get that food from here, prepped safely, and then to the customer.
but what you were also saying is even though and I guess this is probably common in other large restaurants that there's no music because there's such a large operation,
Absolutely.
but that the the sound of cutting, the sound of stirring, the sound of all these things kind of give a inherent musicality almost. There is
Yeah.
kind of rhythm and sounds going on.
Yeah, I mean, if we look back into our history to building the pyramids, the slave days, all the different chapters of history we've gone through, regardless if there was a boombox or not, or an orchestra or not, there was music, and a lot of that had to come with the sound of the tools and the sound of the labor and the sound of man creating something, and
Hmm.
someone else kind of picking up on that too. And that's just what it's like in the kitchen, because there's a lot of labor, there's a lot of hard work that goes on back there, and we're there for a long time. You know,
Yeah.
the employees necessarily in California is a lot different. They work an 8-hour shift roughly, unless I require overtime. But as the chefs, we get 12-hour days every single day.
Wow,
You
it's a
know,
lot.
that's labor. Yeah, that's a lot of time that we put together. So we walk into the office, you may hear some California reggae going on, because that's just the mindset we're in. We just got done doing a beach barbecue, right? We're almost out of work. Me and a couple of the chefs are going to go grab a cold beer at the beach down the road, and we're going to watch the sunset go down. And we want to listen to some reggae. There may be other times where you walk into the office, or you may hear a chef driving home or leaving the parking lot, and you could hear like the craziest death metal ever, because maybe that's just where his mind's at after 3 12-hour days, where
Yeah.
all he wants to do is just let loose. It's not necessarily my cup of tea. I have my own styles of music that I can relate to based on my moods as well. But they call chefs kitchen pirates, and I think they call chefs kitchen pirates for a reason. Is because they can be a little rough, they can be a little rugged sometimes, but we all go back to the same fundamentals. We all love food, we love art, we love music, and they just all tie in together.
So it's pretty common in kitchens, this whole sort of love of music while you're cooking, before and after.
Yeah,
Pretty common thing
yeah.
to have the people preparing food, cooking food, be passionate about music as well.
Absolutely. I mean, in my house, I live right by the beach. When I wake up in the morning, I have a Bluetooth speaker in my bedroom. First thing I do is I hit my playlist in the morning. My alarm is set to different types of music. I don't have a traditional beep, beep, beep. So I start off right off the back in the morning time. I'm listening to some type of soft introduction, whether that could be an Elton John song, whether that could be all the way to the Celine Dion, whether we go, like I said, back to reggae, whether we go to hip hop. I start my day with music, and then I go into my bathroom and I continue to play music there. From there, I take my dog for a walk. We walk along the beach. We hear the parrots outside. We hear the waves outside. It's another type of music. It's another calming environment.
Yep.
Then I get in my car and I drive to work, and now it's okay. What mood am I in today? Is it going to be a crazy day at work? Are we going to go with one of my favorite hip hop artists? Are we going to go 90s R&B maybe, just because that's kind of the mood I'm in right now? And then when I get to work, it's game on. It's like I'm going into a stadium with thousands of people watching me, because I have 1,000 people watching me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just happens to be a kitchen.
Yeah. So one of the other things you mentioned about working in a big kitchen without without music for safety reasons, really, is that some people might start singing.
Exactly.
So that's permitted, and I suppose if you're kind of participating in the music, it's not as distracting as if you're just listening and it's taking you away somewhere. Is that?
It's not necessarily that. When it comes to, so I'm a banquet chef, right? When I used to run restaurants, it was a little bit different. Before dinner service, I would allow music in the kitchen because that's okay, because there's only 6 guys I have to pay attention to. As a banquet chef, my team is so big, and we have banquet hot, then we have garde manger, so that's a whole other team of chefs too. And their chef and myself, we're very good friends, and we relate to each other a lot of music. He's from France. I grew up in South Africa. There's not a whole lot of like core. There's not a whole lot of correlation between the two of us, but we relate on food, personality, and our music. We throw at each other. He'll throw a couple songs at me, and I'm like, oh, I don't understand it, but I can feel it. I can understand I can understand the drop to it, the beat to it, everything else that kind of goes with it. I may not understand the words. And then on the other end of it too, I'll throw things at him that he's never even thought of hearing or seen or anything like that. And it's the same style. He can pick up on it. He can relate to it somehow, some way. And I think that's the beauty of music. But I've also spent my whole career as a professional chef. If I take the family travels, growing up traveling all over America, I've been to 32 states. I was a private chef at one point, and then when I left that, I went for a corporate company, which I'm not going to mention. But so I would open up restaurants all the way from Jacksonville, Florida, to California, basically the Bible Belt. And as I went through these different regions, I would spend anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks doing one restaurant opening at a time, if not more, with my dog everywhere I went. And the environments changed. So like when I was in Houston, Texas, my brother was down there working oil and gas for a while. My company sent me to Houston, Texas as my core station. And basically what I would do is I would leave Houston and I would go do all these store openings all over the country. The music changed, the environments changed. So when I was in Texas on a Thursday night after work, I never had boots until my brother bought them for me, but we'd go throw on our boots and my hat because that's what was required to go to a country bar or a country, throwdown as they would call it. And we would thrive in country music, and I loved it. Line dancing, two-stepping, the whole 9 yards. And I also grew up in Michigan, where rap, hip hop, classical rock, and country are like big genres of music over there too.
Mm-hmm.
So, going from region to region. When I was in New Orleans, opening up restaurants there. I mean, bluegrass, live jazz, live jazz, and then hardcore hip hop. 3 of my favorite types of music was like founded there too. So you can go from the the House of Blues, and you can see Lil Wayne, for example, who you would never expect coming in, and he would come in and just put on a show with a jazz band behind him. Who would ever thought that?
Right.
A 5-piece jazz band, and then you got Lil Wayne in the background coming out and just having a good time, just freestyling as he goes. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think the fact that an artist can jump onto any set or any, it doesn't matter what the style of music is, they can relate to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they can enjoy themselves. And that goes right back to being a chef. You can put me in any environment, whether I'm camping up on a mountain or if I'm in the most high-end kitchen, and I can still produce something.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So in the times when you do have a fairly large crew like where you are now and you're a banquet chef and someone does start singing, do you then have times that might be 10, 15 minutes of sort of a chef choir or chorus and
Not, I wouldn't say quite to that degree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's minimal every single day. 2 or 3 of my guys will start singing together, whether they're in the cooler, cleaning the cooler, or whether they're slicing or dicing or prepping or whatever that may be. But like I say, in this environment, when it comes to production, we have to keep it pretty tight. We have to keep it pretty military as far as, look, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and this is how we get through it.
Yeah.
Every other part of that, there's just times of the day where it's not okay. And that's just the reality of it. It goes back to, this is the job, we have to accomplish it. I need focus. I need to make sure that when we slice these onions, we're not getting to a point where we're lost in the music, or we're lost in what's going on around us, and we're not paying attention to the way that this green onion looks or the way that this tomato is sliced. Because if I need 1,000 of these tomatoes, I need 1,000 of these tomatoes the exact same way. Because that's what makes us great. That's what makes us better than all the other hotels around us. Is the fact that we pay that kind of attention to things.
So why do you do this? Why do you like being a chef, you like food prep, but is there an ultimate kind of goal in what you're doing? I mean, I guess it's so to please the customer.
I'm doing it.
Huh?
I think I'm doing it. My goal was to travel, was to culture. I love culture, and that goes right back to music too. To go off the field here a little bit, left field on you. I take one big trip a year with my brothers. Last year, around Christmas time, I took 4 weeks off. I spent a week in San Diego because I'd only been in San Diego at that point for like 6 months. Not even 6 months, probably like 3 months. So I spent a week here at home in my backyard, and sometimes I don't take enough time to do that. After I spent a week here, before I left, we went to a Cali Reggae Festival. One of my favorite bands out here is Revolution. They're based out of San Diego and up and down the coast a little bit. And their whole thing is feel good music, California, outdoors, good times. That's their MO. So we did that, loved it. First time I saw them live, they had like a 20 person orchestra in the background, everything from saxophones to keyboards to trumpets. I mean, the whole 9 yards, right? Which you don't always expect out of a reggae band.
Right.
So we do that. I take off. I fly to North Carolina where my family lives. I get home. We live all the way out in the country over there. And boom, first thing I do is I go to my favorite fried chicken place. I go in there. They've got some old little lady in the background just singing away her blues every Friday afternoon. She gets on her one mic, nothing else, just her and a mic, and she does her little thing with her keyboard. So automatically I went from West Coast to East Coast, and their whole environment has changed, okay, within a matter of minutes. So I leave that place. I leave the chicken place. I go home. I get home. We have a whole lot of property. We have speakers all over the property. So when my dad puts music on, I mean, no matter where you are on our property, you're going to hear the music. Boom, I walk into old school country, 90s country, Conway Twitty, things like that.
Uh-huh.
Boom, I'm over there. Then my brothers start showing up. They're all young and tough and rugged guys too. We're all late 20s, early 30s. So their surprise for me was a 5-day, so basically a week stay all the way up in the Smoky Mountains. And that's something we like to do. We like to find like a small little Airbnb in the smallest little town in the middle of nowhere. That way we get together, we can relate, we can have our time together without the bells and the whistles. Because we all live busy lives. We all live in major cities, and we all have, intense careers, if you want to say. So off we go to Marshall, North Carolina. It's about 5.5, 6 hours away from our property down in Raleigh. We drive all the way up. It starts to snow. It's raining. I just left 75 and sunny behind me in San Diego.
Right.
We pull up to this town. Village, should I say, and it has a maximum of 400 people. It's cut out in the middle of a mountain. We kind of look around at each other and we're like, we might have went a little further off the grid than expected at the time. One of my brothers, we call him B Stu, Brandon. He looks at me and he goes, quote, "Homie, I don't know where the hell we are this time, but we're going to do the damn thing." And we all said, "You know what? All right, that's fine." So we get up to our cabin where there's only three buildings in this whole town, if you even want to call it a town. One of them is a bar, but they can't serve alcohol with more than 5%. I mean, beer with more than 5%.
All right.
No grocery stores. There's a sheriff department with one sheriff in there, and then they have the town hall. So, all right, we don't know what we're going to do. So we take off to the next town. We get all the groceries. We buy all the booze. We buy all the steaks. We buy everything we need for the next 5 days, because other than that, we don't have anywhere else to go.
Right.
We come trucking back through town, and as we leave the grocery store, we find out that they're going to have their annual, so once a year, they're going to have their annual bluegrass throwdown at the Marshall Town Hall.
Whoa.
One of the 3 buildings in this town. So, we're like, we're going. We don't care what it takes. We're going to this damn bluegrass throwdown. None of us have seen real bluegrass being performed before. None of us had ever, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. So to fast forward a little bit, that night we're barbecuing and we're outside and we're having a good time. We're drinking, we're eating, and we're like, all right, let's round them up. We're going to walk down the bottom of the hill, the bottom of the mountain, and we're going to go check this thing out. So sure shit, we get down there. There's probably 60 people in this little town hall, all lined up. It's almost like a church, like the church booths. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Lined up. And I mean, white hair, no hair. White hair, no hair. Teeth, no teeth. Teeth, no teeth. Everybody's wearing plaid. Everyone's got boots on, like real working boots. These are working Americans. And we walk in, and every single person basically stops, turns around, and looks at us. There's a tall white guy like myself with a beard. There's a big fat country guy, which is my other brother. My other brother's in IT, so he's got long hair, glasses, a little nerdy, and then our other brother is black and a little bit tougher and bigger and just built up. So the four of us, we look a little out of place. So we come trooping in. We're here to have a good time. We sit down, and then all of a sudden, there's a moment where we realize how far away from our reality we are and how accepting these people are of us. Because it just picked right back up. The banjo was going. I don't even know some of the instruments that were going, and they just started throwing down bluegrass. And it's a big bluegrass freestyle, And they have a dance that goes with it, too, a whole different kind of dance that none of us had ever seen before. So as we're sitting there, we're having a couple more drinks. We're adapting to our environment, if you may say. And these old ladies see these young studs, and they start picking us out of the aisle one by one and bringing us onto the dance floor. We all love to dance. We all love music enough to where we can adapt, as I say. Yeah. Next thing you know, I'm doing a two-step with a 90-year-old lady to a live bluegrass band.
Wow!
Never in my life would I. You couldn't have paid me to tell me that I was going to do that, But it just happens. These things just happen, and it goes with culture. And hadn't it been for the culture, we wouldn't have been so accepting of it. Had you told us there's a bluegrass throwdown, 90% of the time, 90% of people would have been like, no, thank you. But it was one of the best nights we had up there.
It really does show kind of the universal aspect of music. And Chef, you're so passionate about life in general. It just really comes through. And you're passionate about music and about cooking, being a chef, food preparation. How are those passions kind of similar? Are they? What are the commonalities between your passion for cooking and your passion for music? It seems almost inseparable.
I think a great example of that, is in Ocean Beach, the town, my town right here where I'm at. They have every Wednesday night. They have the farmers market. Okay, the farmers market, from what I've seen over the last 2 years or 18 months, is not quite a farmers market. This is more of like a food street party. Huh. I go there every Wednesday, not every Wednesday, at least 2-3 Wednesdays a month after work. I make a point of it to where I can leave my day behind. I go down here. I'm surrounded by all sorts of different types of food, live bands. And at the end of all of this, and on the beach, every Wednesday, they have a drum circle from all the locals, and then they have a fire ring circle, also all the locals. So I go down this street fair, if we call it that. I've passed 3 live bands going through the fair. I've got food from East Africa, one of my favorite places to eat over here. I go sit on the wall. I have dinner as I watch the sunset, and I have the music of the water. I turn around, and there's a natural drum circle going on. And people are just playing to the rhythm of what's going on around them. And when you can relate, I find myself at peace this way. There's nothing going on around me that is forced. I'm watching the natural sunset. I'm listening to the water, right?
Right.
As natural as that becomes. I turn around and there's people playing drums. I grew up in South Africa. That is something that I was so used to hearing all the time. And these people behind me, they're not playing a certain song. They're not playing to somebody else's beat. If they join the circle, people walk up, sit down, and they start to play. And they figure out how they can join what's going on. And it's just all natural. Nothing is being forced. And that's why I have such a passion for art and food and culinary, because you can't force something. Some of my best plates, if you go look at my Instagram, some of the most exotic plates I've put together have 5 items on it. And it's not about what I've done to these items or this product. It's about how simplistic a good piece of food can be if you just leave it alone and you just do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that's what music can be too. You know, if you go down to the beach and you have the waves in the background and you play a
Ukulele.
A ukulele. When I lived in Hawaii, it takes two things: the ocean and one person to just play with the water, and it can sound like you have 10 people playing, but realistically, it's just him adapting to the environment he's in.
Wow. Well, you know, it kind of is what you're expressing is sort of a demonstration of the real basic essential aspect of music and food. We need to eat. We need to have music.
If you go all the way back before America became what it is, right? There was a foundation, and it was to eat, provide for your family, so they farmed, and when they were on their farms, they sang. And then when they went home after dinner, when radio started coming out, they would eat food, and they would sit around and listen to our talk show and music. And that's really what life was back then.
Right.
So to be able to, and this is something on my weekend, every time I have 2 days off, which is not all the time, but when I do, I make a point to where one of my 2 days off, my dog and I, we travel to America together, we jump in the car, we drive up and down the beaches till we find a nice little spot, we take the music and we go, and we listen to music, we eat some good food, and that's what we do for the day. Because you have to be able to touch back with reality and what the core reason of what we do by being able to check in with yourself sometimes. And for me, checking in with myself is kind of removing myself from my environment. You know, I'm very physical. I box. I do a lot of working out. I do a lot of physical things, and I'm with people all the time. So sometimes for me to reset and be able to go back to what I do every single day for the next 6 days of my next week, 70, 80 hours of my life, I have to be able to reset before I go back to do that. And by me resetting means sometimes I need to be left alone with my playlist of the day, my dog, and my backyard. And I've made a point to put myself in a position to where my backyard is the beach because that's my zen. That's what brings me back to my roots and my core as a kid.
Yeah, wow. Very profound, Chef. Such a good conversation about music, a passion for music, passion for cooking, and really passion for nature and the sounds of nature. It's just very exciting. I'm really glad we've had the opportunity to have this conversation. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to mention or you've thought about or I didn't ask about. I'm not sure when our paths will cross again soon, but I sure hope they do.
Well, you have all my contact information, so you can reach out to me anytime you want.
Yeah, tell everybody what's your Instagram account or, whatever, if you have any social media you'd like people to,
I don't go too crazy on social media, but if you want to see what we do in the kitchen and the food that we produce, you can reach me at Chef DBD616. That's DBD, Daniel Ben David, at 616. And I don't post a whole lot, but I've got, a good couple hundred photos up there that I think will really put a little insight of where my passion is. And the last thing I want to say is food is art and music is art and art is art. And you can't judge somebody on it. Just try to relate to it, Figure out what can tie you to their art and don't be so quick to judge it.
Wow. Good words of advice. Thank you very much, Chef. Things happen for a reason sometime. I'm glad you were able to set me up with that piece of corn and that we let the conversation go so that we're able to do this. And, we'll try to stay in touch. And thank you very, very much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Chef Daniel Ben David, everybody.
Thank you, Jeff.
You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.